Rabbi Kolakowski, Internet Sleuth. Back in college, we made a Purim spiel. I wasn't in that one, but there was a Purim spiel. I think Yair Dar was in it, and it was about one of our rabbis from yeshiva. They said, they said his name was Internet Sleuth, and part of it was because he found some tefillin on eBay. This was, like in 2004. I can't believe, that was 16 years ago. And he found these tefillin on eBay and managed to return them to their rightful owner. So, and he was kind of embarrassed about it, the rabbi, but they were, it's the whole thing, Internet Sleuth. So, at work today, I was the Internet Sleuth, and I solved my case. Regular Sherlock Holmes here. I could be a private eye, and I got the hat, So, I'm not going to get into the details, but one of our inmates passed away, and we had no contact for his next of kin. We knew they existed, we had their names, couldn't find them. And I put a lot of work in, and I found one of his sons. So, pretty cool, I think. He's his youngest son, I believe. So anyway, and at least, I got to give him the information. Someone should know that this person died. This particular inmate was a larger-than-life character, and had horrible crimes. But he made himself in the prison like this character that and almost like a caricature. He was a part of a particular religious community there that for many years didn't have any outside leadership. They went for about 4 years without leadership, and he kind of filled that void when their previous leader passed away, and I was able to find them a leader from the community outside, a chaplain that I hired, and the power struggles there. I mean, it would make a great movie, the whole story, or a reality show about these characters, but this guy, on the outside, his kids didn't want to have anything to do with him, obviously. So it's a pretty amazing story, though, that we were able to, I put in a lot of following tons of different leads till I finally found somebody to at least let them know that their father had passed away, So, just an amazing story. Anyway, so I'm just excited about that. Maybe I shouldn't be posting this on YouTube, but I'm not giving any details. But it's just, I put in so much work to find somebody, and thank God. I mean, I said some prayers too, and thank God. Shiru Laizamru Laisicha B'chol Nifleisav. It's not me. I'm not taking credit for this. It feels good to have found, but mamish, I felt like this was my responsibility. Even though maybe it really wasn't. There were other departments, but I put in the effort, and a lot of it came back empty. But then I prayed, and God took care of it. It wasn't me, because it was just amazing how it all came together, and I see the hand of God in this. But it feels good. It feels good to have been able to accomplish something there, and been a tool in God's hands to make sure people get the information they need. And it was satisfying, to go through all of this work and everything and come out. I'm sorry, I'm coming down with a cold a little bit. I can't help but blow my nose. And so I had a busy day. Fast day went by fast. I usually make the video about mourning over the Septuagint. I made a few videos on that subject. You can look at that for that subject. I've discussed that before. We discussed a little bit today at work. But I wanted to really make the video not about my internet sleuthing, with all due credit to Yair Dar. Check out his video of the from Twitter. Somehow I didn't make it. I guess because we went to school together, it's not. But Yair Dar made a cool parody of Adam Sandler's Hanukkah song about from Twitter. And I think, one of the best lines there was about who else washes on 2 slices of pizza. It was the whole thing was pretty cool, actually. So you could check that out. But it's somewhere on YouTube, I guess. But so he was the internet sleuth in the Purim spiel. But I wanted to address our friend Eric Smith, always our very provocateur, and I mean that in the nicest possible way. Eric Smith, because he, there's importance in being provocative sometimes. But Eric said, nobody wants to say who is doing this. I'm talking about the attacks on the Hasidic Jewish community. And there's a reason for that. It's not the black community. It's not the African American community attacking the Jewish community. It's not a war between blacks and Jews. All right, 3 people, and maybe more, 3 people were extremely violent to the point of, well, more than that, 4 or 5 that, individuals who happened to have been African American were responsible for deadly force, violent attacks, and other individuals who happened to be African American happened to be attacking members of the Jewish community. But the truth of the matter is, a person's skin color doesn't matter any more than a person's eye color. I'm not going to say, people with brown eyes or green eyes or blue eyes were attacking, people of a particular religious group. It's just silly. Religion matters because it's ideology. Skin color doesn't matter. Now, I understand there's a culture that's related, that people feel a common culture related to that skin color, the same way that Jewish people, or maybe not so religious, feel the common culture as Jews with or without religion. But that's really neither here nor there with this. This is not an issue about African Americans or even about the Hebrew Israelite community or communities. It's not like it's really one community as a whole. But there's more than two reasons why I don't want to mention this by name of who. Because first of all, I believe very much, like there was a video that Glenn Beck posted. It was from 1946. It's before Glenn Beck was born even. It's called "Don't Be a Sucker." You can find it on YouTube. Great film. Short film, propaganda film, but in a positive way. And it basically is saying that, the most important minority is the minority of one, is the individual. And that's what makes our republic great, is it's not the demographics of the democracy that matters, but the rights of the individual. And that's what, sets America apart from a lot of other countries where it's the collective that matters more than the individual, whereas in America it's the rugged individualism of the individual that matters more. And that's the problem with the Democrats, is that they want to turn us into a European-style country where it's the demographics, where it's the collective more than the individual that matters. And that's not what America's about. America's about the individual. And protecting the rights of the individual. That the most important minority in America is the minority of one. And the Democrats are obsessed with putting us into groups so they have voting blocks. And I understand why people want to get together and have voting blocks and make sure that their voice matters as a collective within the American fabric of society. But the most important minority is the minority of one. The other thing is that many of our great rabbis have said that one of the things that causes anti-Semitism, quote unquote, and again, I don't like that term anti-Semitism, I prefer Judeophobia, is calling someone unjustly an anti-Semite, or perhaps even justly calling them so. There's nothing to be gained by labeling somebody an anti-Semite. You're only going to breed more animosity doing that. What we need to do instead is look at ourselves, repent, and try to see what we need to do to better ourselves, come back to God. That's what matters. Not calling out other people and labeling people as anti-Semites. And part of that, of course, is calling out on the Jewish community themselves to repent, and to come back to God. Now, I remember I had an argument on Twitter a few weeks ago about this issue of the president's executive order, and the straw that I guess that broke the camel's back, that people were upset at me and felt that I crossed the line, was when I said the following. Alan Dershowitz often says that the difference between, let's say, legitimate criticism of Israel and Zionism, I don't know about Zionism, but Israel, in his mind, and illegitimate or anti-Semitic criticism is when there's a double standard. Meaning, if you treat a Jewish country different than you treat France or England or Saudi Arabia or China, and hold them to a different standard, that's anti-Semitic, according to Alan Dershowitz. And my argument is, if we follow Alan Dershowitz's approach, then Judaism as a religion is anti-Semitic. Because Judaism as a religion holds Jews to a different standard than non-Jews. And so you're saying God is anti-Semitic, the Torah is anti-Semitic, by Alan Dershowitz's definition of anti-Semitism. And I can't I can't accept that. Now, the answer that this pundit gave back to me was, it's different when someone else is applying it to you and when you apply it to yourself. But my answer, and he was very upset that I said that, and he blocked me on Twitter and this and that, because I said that to hold that because I said that if we accept Alan Dershowitz's definition of anti-Semitism, then Judaism is an anti-Semitic religion. The Torah is an anti-Semitic document, and God is anti-Semitic, according to Alan Dershowitz. Now, to say that we're putting this standard on ourselves is heretical, is my first answer back to this individual, because we're not putting the standard on ourselves. God gave us the standard. God wrote the Torah. To say that we wrote the Torah is heretical. God wrote the Torah. God gave us these standards. And the whole idea of the Jewish people is that we are a group that has different standards than everybody else. That is how Judaism views the difference between Jews and non-Jews, is that Jews have more responsibilities that non-Jews don't have. And that's it. That's the only difference. Jews keep the Sabbath, have to keep kosher, Jewish men have to put on tefillin, do all these things as devotion to God that non-Jews don't have to do. Non-Jews just basically have to not ruin the world. Don't murder, don't steal, the basics. That's all that's expected from the non-Jew in Judaism. The 7 laws of Noah. It's a negative concept of thou shalt not. The only positive aspect of it is to set up courts of law to keep those other 6 laws, to make sure that those other 6 laws are kept. And that's all that's expected in the eyes of Judaism from the non-Jew. Now, obviously, non-Jews, they'll have their own religions that will do more than that, than the basics of the 7 laws. But what we're saying is, as long as you're meeting those basic 7 laws, and you're not Jewish, you're good. But for a Jew, as being part of this particular group in this religion, we have much more responsibilities that non-Jews don't have as a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And the way I compare it to in the Catholic Church, let's say, it's not a sin for a Catholic layperson to get married. But a priest and a nun and a monk, they take vows of chastity, and they're not allowed to be married. It's not that one is better than the other. It's they have different roles, and they have to fulfill those roles. And the thing is though a layperson can become a priest, and so too, but the priest can't go back to being a layperson. Even he's the frock, he can't, in the eyes of the church, he can't break his vows, right? Obviously, he can decide he doesn't believe in it anymore, but that's neither here nor there. But in the eyes of the church, he remains bound by those vows. It's pretty much the same thing in Judaism, meaning if you're not born Jewish, you can choose to become Jewish, but then there's no turning back. Excuse me. The point, though, that I'm bringing up here is that, again, in the eyes of Judaism, that's the difference between the Jew and the non-Jew, is more responsibilities. We are held to a different standard than everybody else, and it's not that we're better because we are held to a different standard. It's that we have a particular mission, a priestly mission, to minister to the rest of the world. And you know, pretty much to be an example, a light unto the nations, to show the world that God exists, to be also to be witness to God's existence, to be there as witnesses, kind of like how there's one group called the Witnesses, a Christian group. In their view, although other Christians don't accept them as Christians, but they call themselves that they are the witnesses. And that's really pretty much the job of the Jewish people, are to be the witnesses. It says in the Bible, Eidayatem, you are my witnesses. And that we are here to give the testimony of God's existence, to the point where, when I think was the Emperor of Austro-Hungary perhaps asked some of his advisors for proof of God's existence, and they said, Your Majesty, the Jews. The fact that the Jews have stayed around when all these other nations have disappeared proves the existence of God. Or at least lends evidence to the existence of God. And it's certainly something that we believe, the Rabbi Yonason in his commentary on the Siddur, Rabbi Yonason Eibeshitz in his commentary on the prayer book, he says, when we say in the bracha of Moedim, in the Thanksgiving blessing of the 3 daily prayers, we say, Val Nisech Shem Chol Yem Imanu, and for your miracles that are daily with us. What are the miracles that are daily with us? The very existence of our people is there to bear testimony to the truth of God's existence and to the truth of revelation, and that we have this club, so to speak, that's purpose is to remind the world that God spoke at Mount Sinai, to show that this is true. And so we put on tefillin for that purpose. We keep Passover for that purpose. For all these purposes, to prove God's existence. And so that's our purpose in the world as Jews, is to give testimony to the truth of God. Now, and to be a light unto the nations. Now, the thing that I would furthermore add to this critique of Dershowitz's claim that holding Jews to a different standard is anti-Semitic, and holding a so-called Jewish state, even though it's not a Jewish state, to a different standard is anti-Semitic, or a perceived Jewish state is to a different standard than other countries is anti-Semitic. I don't believe that's necessarily so, because what we can say is excuse me. Is that excuse me, sorry. What we can say is that if you're going to say Israel is a secular state, and so you want to compare it to Japan or China or France or Turkey, and say that it's unfair to hold Israel to a different standard, maybe you have something to say there. But Israel calls itself a Jewish state. And Judaism is a religion. And so I do believe it will be held to a different standard the way Saudi Arabia, which is a Muslim state, or Iran, which is a Muslim state, is expected to follow the dictates of Islam. And the Vatican City is a Catholic state, expected to follow dictates of the Roman Catholic Church. It's the Holy See of the Roman Catholic Church. But perhaps also, Ireland is a Catholic country, and it's a lot of the South American countries. And if these countries are wearing their religion on their sleeve in a way similar to how Israel does, and how Israel claims to represent the Jewish people and Jews, which it doesn't, but it makes that claim, and there is that perception, a false perception and a sinful perception, but the perception is there, it exists. So how can it be wrong to hold Israel accountable for what they claim in the same way that you would hold the Vatican City accountable if they were not living up to the standards of the church? So, or we would hold Iran accountable if it was not living up to the standards of Shia Islam. We'd hold Saudi Arabia accountable if it's not living up to the standards of Sunni Islam. How is that anti-Semitic? How is that problematic? I don't believe it is. I believe it's totally fair and consistent. If you're going to wave a flag and call yourself a Jewish state, well, you should be expected to be held to those standards of Judaism. And since they don't, then the criticism is well deserved, because they're engaging in false advertising. Just as we're upset when certain Christian missionary groups refer to themselves as Messianic Jews. And I understand there's come to a certain point in history and culture where not all Messianic Jews are necessarily missionaries trying to take Jews away from Judaism, but it's more become, in many ways, a way that Christians are interested in the Hebrew roots of their own faith. And in a certain way, quote-unquote Messianic Judaism has brought more Christians to Judaism than Jews to Christianity. It's backfired to them. I know many people who were Christian, and they were interested in Hebrew roots, and they started attending a Messianic synagogue, quote-unquote, as they self-identify it, and then they realized what they really wanted was Jesus, and not what they really wanted was Judaism and not Jesus. And it really was a way to bring them, and many of them, become B'nai Noach, and many of them become Gerei Tzedek and become full Jews. I'm not talking about the Ger movement, this and that, the neo Ger Toshav movement of David Katz. That's a ludicrous nonsense movement. But rather, people should be, I believe, if you believe in Torah, you should become a Ger Tzedek. If there's some reason why you can't become a Ger Tzedek, you can't keep Shabbos, you should try, you should keep trying. And if you can't, no harm, no foul, there's nothing wrong not converting. But there are certain issues, Gezel, Pachas B'Shava Pruta, it's almost impossible to avoid that. So, we'll move aside from there for now. Essentially, that's what we have to work with. It's not our job to be the anti-Semite police and to go around. There's no point in these organizations that go around labeling anti-Semites and this and that. It's quite ridiculous, and it does much more harm than it does good. In a certain way, it creates more anti-Semites. As I said before, we learn in the Medrash about Timnah that if we were more welcoming to converts and so forth, we wouldn't have these problems. The sad thing is that the communities that are being attacked, the Hungarian communities, Satmar communities, tend to be welcoming to converts. You have a lot of, especially Puerto Rican converts, they become Satmar Hasidim. It's a little bit more difficult, perhaps, for African Americans, but the fact is that the Satmar Dayanim will welcome the they will welcome the Gerim, the converts, no matter what their race is, as at least to convert, and they don't really care if in Satmar, they will convert you and let you go be modern Orthodox. They don't care. They're not looking to have Hasidim. They're very happy if you're going to be modern Orthodox, or you're going to be Litvish or whatever you're going to be, and they'll do the Gavers for you. It's not about politics and not about it's about the halacha. And so if you're going to be a pious modern Orthodox Jew, they don't care. They're not pushing you to become Satmar. So that's the sad thing here, is that this is a community that does. In Jersey City, the victim there with the store, there's a video of him handing out Halloween candy to trick-or-treaters, African American kids. That video needs to be publicized. It's very important, because this is not our tradition to celebrate Halloween, but we recognize what it means to be a good neighbor. In Bloomingburg, when they opened the pizza store, there was free pizza for every non-Jew from Bloomingburg who came in and they were trying to show they're good neighbors. And it was, again, in Bloomingburg, it wasn't the anti-Semites. It was the self-hating Jews. It was people like Weinstein, and Lori Weinstein was the big agitator, and what was the other girl's name? Holly Roach, and these were the troublemakers. Were the Jews, just like and that's what's always been, is that the self-hating Jews, are the problem in the world, not the non-Jews. If we we got to make more effort to reach out and in a way that's appropriate for us. We're not looking to go hang out, play pool, play baseball. That's not our thing. Our pastime is learning Torah. That's the pastime of the pious Jew. To a certain extent, do some Orthodox Jews have other hobbies? Yes. Baseball happens to be a popular one, you're right. But we're generally not going to be playing baseball or basketball, whatever. Sometimes sometimes they do, but it's just not our way. That's not what we do as much. Even the modern Orthodox, to a certain extent, they're not generally, especially today, we're much more cloistered, but there's reasons for that, my father, he wasn't Jewish, he told me, he remembers playing basketball with the boys from YCQ. I'm assuming, Rabbi Weinberger was probably, they were about the same age, and they were probably, there together, and my father said, the boys from the Catholic school, sometimes they would knock the yarmulkes off the Jewish kids, or from the public school. By that time, I think my father was already in public school, so they can make a shot, and it wasn't like, I wouldn't call it anti-Semitic. It was just, horseplay, boys will be boys. But that's what they used to do, So, but they would play basketball together. But after a while, if you're playing basketball with the kids from the public school and they're knocking your yarmulkes off, you're not going to want to play with them anymore. Zois gewesen the most, and in those days in Jamaica, Queens, but that's whatever. I have kind of a cold today, so I'm out of it. I'm sorry that but the thing is to sit down and talk and have dialogue. I think especially with clergy, I find that to be very satisfying personally, to sit down with the clergy of the other faiths and talk and get to know each other and learn about each other's religion. Like there was the movie about Crown Heights from Showtime, made for TV movie with Howie Mandel, and when the Jewish kids, they were asking, in a kind of a rude way to the black kids, what's the meaning of the dreadlocks to the Rastafarians, and they pointed out that it's the same verse that we have for our payas, in Leviticus. When they're doing it, that's their payas, and you find out that you have more in common than you thought, and that doesn't mean you're going to become a Rastafarian or they're going to become a Jew necessarily. But we're not, we're trying to build bridges, So, and it's difficult for our community because we've built certain fences around our community. We want to preserve our culture in a fierce way. I was reading descriptions. The forward, they had like listings of synagogues and things, and there was one synagogue, and they were virtual signaling, saying that they're fiercely egalitarian. Now, why is it more of a virtue to be fiercely egalitarian than it is a virtue to be fiercely Haredi? How is one more of a virtue than another? Meaning that the Hasidic community is being looked down upon because we want to protect our culture, and so we want to limit our secular studies to bare minimum. We want to keep the kids, sheltered. How is that any less of a virtue than being fiercely egalitarian? We're not sending the government to try to take away their right to be fiercely egalitarian. Why are they trying to get us to give up to be fiercely Haredi? Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe, comment, and we'll see you later.